I was standing in the maternity ward of Boston General Hospital, holding my newborn daughter Emily for the first time, when my phone rang. It was my father's nurse from the hospice facility. "Ms. Blackwood, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but your father passed away about 20 minutes ago. It was peaceful. He wasn't in any pain." I stood there, frozen, this tiny perfect human in my arms, and my father gone. Emily was 3 hours old. Dad had been holding on to meet her. I know he was. He'd lasted 2 weeks longer than the doctors predicted, fighting stage 4 pancreatic cancer with everything he had. "I understand," I managed to say. "I'll be there as soon as I can." My husband Ryan took Emily from my arms as I started to cry. Life and death, all in the same morning. That was April 15th, 2022. I had no idea that my grief was about to be weaponized against me by the person I trusted most in the world. My sister, Victoria. Let me back up and tell you about our family. I'm Sarah Blackwood, I'm 32 years old, and I'm a high school English teacher in Newton, Massachusetts. My sister Victoria is 36, 4 years older than me. Growing up, we were close. Not best friends exactly, but solid sisters. We fought over clothes and boys like all sisters do, but we had each other's backs. Victoria is a corporate lawyer at a big firm in downtown Boston. She's always been the ambitious one, the driven one. Designer clothes, expensive car, penthouse apartment in the Seaport district. She married her husband Derek when she was 28. Derek's a hedge fund manager. They're the kind of couple that throws charity galas and vacations in the Maldives. I went a different route. I married Ryan, who's a firefighter, when I was 26. We bought a modest house in Dedham, nothing fancy, just a 3-bedroom colonial with a yard for the dog. We're comfortable, not wealthy. I drive a Honda CR-V. Victoria drives a Tesla. Our father, Robert Blackwood, was a successful commercial real estate developer. Not billionaire rich, but he'd done very well for himself. He owned several properties in the Boston area, had a solid investment portfolio, and had built a comfortable life after our mother died from breast cancer when I was 12 and Victoria was 16. Dad raised us by himself after that. He never remarried, poured all his energy into us and his business. He was a good father. Stern sometimes, old-fashioned in his values, but loving. He paid for both our educations, helped us with down payments on our first homes, was there for every important moment. When Dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in January 2022, it hit us both hard. The doctors gave him 6 months, maybe less. He declined rapidly. By March, he was in hospice care. During those final months, Victoria stepped up in a big way. She visited Dad every day, handled his medical decisions, dealt with his financial affairs. I was grateful. I was 7 months pregnant with Emily, exhausted, emotional, and teaching full-time. Ryan and I visited Dad several times a week, but Victoria was there constantly. "Don't worry about anything," she told me one evening when I apologized for not being there more. "You're about to have a baby. Dad understands. I've got everything under control." I trusted her completely. She was my big sister. She'd always been the responsible one, the organized one. Of course, she had everything under control. Dad's estate was substantial. The properties alone were worth about $3.8 million. His investment accounts held another $2.1 million. The house he lived in, a beautiful Victorian in Brookline, was worth $1.4 million, plus some smaller assets, vehicles, personal property. All told, the estate was valued at roughly $7.5 million. Dad had always told us he'd split everything equally between Victoria and me. 50-50. That's what he'd said for years, and that's what we both expected. 3 days after Dad died, and 1 day after I brought Emily home from the hospital, Victoria came to visit. She was carrying flowers and a gift bag for the baby. We sat in my living room, me exhausted and leaking breast milk, her perfectly put together in her designer suit, fresh from the office. "Sarah, we need to talk about Dad's estate," she said gently. "I know the timing is terrible, but there are some time-sensitive things we need to handle." "Okay," I said, bouncing Emily, who was fussing in my arms. "What do we need to do?" Victoria pulled out a folder. Dad updated his will about 6 weeks ago. He had me take him to his attorney. He wanted to make sure everything was in order before he passed. That makes sense, I said. So we just need to go through probate, right? Victoria's expression shifted slightly, something I couldn't quite read. Sarah, Dad made some changes to how he wanted the estate divided. My stomach dropped. Changes. She handed me a document. I couldn't focus on it, couldn't make the words make sense with my sleep-deprived brain and my crying newborn. What kind of changes? I asked. Victoria took a breath. Dad left me 75% of the estate. You're getting 25%. The room seemed to tilt. What? That can't be right. I know it's a shock. But Dad felt that since I'd been handling all his affairs, managing his care, making all the medical and financial decisions while you were pregnant, that I deserved a larger share. He also mentioned that I have higher expenses, that Derek and I are in a different financial position than you and Ryan. I stared at her. Victoria, that doesn't sound like Dad. He always said 50-50, always. People's wishes change, especially at the end. Dad was very clear about this. I was there when he signed it. His attorney Drew Kensington can confirm everything. Drew Kensington was Dad's longtime attorney, someone who'd handled his business affairs for 20 years. If Drew said this was legitimate, then it had to be. But something felt wrong. Can I see the full will? I asked. Of course, I'll have Drew send you a copy. But Sarah, I want you to know I'm not happy about this either. I argued with Dad about it. I told him it should stay 50-50, but he was adamant. She seemed sincere. She seemed genuinely uncomfortable. And I was so tired, so overwhelmed with grief and new motherhood that I just nodded. Okay, I whispered, if that's what Dad wanted. Victoria hugged me. I know this isn't fair, but you'll still get almost $2 million. That's life-changing money for you and Ryan. You can pay off your mortgage, set up Emily's college fund, maybe even quit teaching if you want. She was right. $1.875 million was still a substantial inheritance. More money than I'd ever dreamed of having. But it wasn't about the money. It was about what it meant. Why would Dad suddenly change his mind? Why would he favor Victoria so dramatically? The next few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights, feeding schedules, and trying to process my father's death while caring for a newborn. Ryan was supportive but as confused as I was. It doesn't make sense, he said one night while doing a 2 a.m. diaper change. Your dad always talked about treating you and Victoria equally. This seems completely out of character. I know, but Victoria said she argued against it, and Drew Kensington confirmed it's legitimate. Have you actually talked to Drew yourself? Ryan asked. I realized I hadn't. Victoria had been the intermediary for everything. I should call him, I said. I called Drew Kensington's office the next morning. His secretary said he was in court but would call me back. He didn't. I called again 2 days later. Same story. Finally, I left a message saying I needed to discuss my father's will and could he please call me back urgently. He called that evening. Sarah, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your father was a good man and a valued client. Thank you, Drew. I'm calling about the will. Victoria said Dad changed it 6 weeks ago to leave her 75% and me 25%. I just want to understand why he made that decision. There was a pause on the line. Sarah, I'm not sure what you're referring to. The will I have on file, the one your father and I reviewed last year, splits the estate 50-50 between you and Victoria. My heart stopped. What? 50-50. That was always Robert's intention. He was very clear about treating his daughters equally. But Victoria said he updated it 6 weeks ago. She said you were there when he signed it. Another pause, longer this time. Sarah, I haven't seen or spoken to your father since last September. He certainly didn't update his will 6 weeks ago, at least not with me. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. Drew, are you absolutely certain? Positive. I have the will right here in his file. Dated September 14th, 2021. Everything split equally between you and Victoria Blackwood, with Victoria named as executor of the estate. Executor, that meant Victoria controlled everything. Drew, can you send me a copy of that will, right now? Of course, I'll email it to you within the hour. I hung up and immediately called Victoria. It went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I sent a text. We need to talk about Dad's will. Call me ASAP. No response. The email from Drew came through 45 minutes later. I opened the PDF with shaking hands. There it was. The will, dated September 14th, 2021, clearly stating that Robert Blackwood's estate was to be divided equally between his two daughters, Sarah Blackwood and Victoria Blackwood-Chen, Victoria's married name. Victoria had lied to me, but why? What was she trying to do? Ryan came home from his shift at the fire station and found me crying at the kitchen table, Emily asleep in her bassinet nearby. Sarah, what's wrong? I showed him the will. I told him about the conversation with Drew. She lied to me. She completely lied. There is no 75-25 split. Dad wanted everything 50-50. Ryan's face darkened. He's normally the most even-tempered person I know, but I could see anger building. So what was her plan? Just lie to you and hope you didn't check. I guess, I don't know. Maybe she thought I'd be too overwhelmed with the baby to question it. Maybe she thought I'd just trust her. Call her again, Ryan said. Right now, put it on speaker. I called. This time, Victoria answered. Hey Sarah, sorry I missed your calls. It's been crazy at work. What's up? Victoria, I just spoke with Drew Kensington. Silence on the other end. He sent me Dad's will, the real will, the one that splits everything 50-50. More silence. Victoria, what the hell is going on? Why did you lie to me? When she finally spoke, her voice was cold, calculated, nothing like the warm sister who'd visited with flowers. Sarah, I don't know what Drew told you, but he's mistaken. Dad updated his will with a different attorney, Peter Sorensen. I'll have Peter send you the documentation. Why would Dad use a different attorney? He'd worked with Drew for 20 years. He wanted a fresh perspective. Drew was fine for routine matters, but for something this important, Dad wanted someone else. It was plausible, barely. Fine, give me Peter Sorensen's number. I'll have him reach out to you. No, give me his number right now. Victoria's tone sharpened. Sarah, I understand you're stressed with the new baby and grieving Dad, but I'm the executor of this estate. I'm handling everything properly and legally. You're going to get your inheritance. You just need to be patient and trust the process. Trust you? You just lied to my face about what Dad wanted. I didn't lie. I told you what the updated will says. If Drew has outdated information, that's his problem. Now I have to go. I'm in the middle of something. She hung up. Ryan and I sat there, stunned. She's stealing from you, Ryan said flatly. She's the executor, which means she controls all the assets. She's going to try to take more than her share. But how? There's a will. There are legal processes. You need a lawyer, right now. I called my friend Jessica, who's a family law attorney. I explained the situation. She listened carefully, then said words that made my blood run cold. Sarah, if Victoria is the executor and she's willing to lie about the terms of the will, she can do a lot of damage before anyone stops her. She can drain accounts, sell properties, move assets around. As executor, she has access to everything. You need to file an objection to the will immediately and petition the court to freeze the estate assets. Can I do that? Yes, but you'll need an estate attorney. I can refer you to someone excellent. Her name is Patricia Morrison. She's aggressive and she doesn't lose. I called Patricia Morrison first thing the next morning. Her retainer was $15,000. We didn't have that kind of money just sitting around, but Ryan said we'd figure it out. We put it on a credit card. Patricia moved fast. Within 3 days, she'd filed a petition with the probate court challenging the administration of Robert Blackwood's estate and requesting a full accounting of all assets. She also demanded that Victoria produce the supposed updated will from Peter Sorensen. Victoria's response came through her own attorney, a shark named Marcus Webb from her firm. They produced a will dated March 3, 2022, allegedly signed by Robert Blackwood in the presence of Peter Sorensen and 2 witnesses. The will stated exactly what Victoria had told me, 75% to Victoria, 25% to me. Patricia examined it carefully. Something's off, she said. The signature doesn't look quite right, and the date is suspicious. March 3rd was a Thursday. I want to check your father's medical records from that day. We subpoenaed Dad's hospice records. On March 3rd, 2022, my father had been heavily sedated for pain management. The nurse's notes indicated he was minimally responsive and unable to engage in meaningful conversation. There was no way he was signing legal documents that day. Patricia also tracked down the witnesses whose names appeared on the will. One was Peter Sorensen's paralegal. The other was a notary public named Linda Chen. When Patricia deposed the paralegal, the young woman became nervous and evasive. She claimed she'd witnessed Robert Blackwood sign the will, but couldn't remember specific details about his condition or demeanor. The notary, Linda Chen, was more interesting. Patricia discovered that Linda Chen was Victoria's husband Derek's cousin. Not illegal, necessarily, but certainly suspicious. "This will is fraudulent," Patricia told me after reviewing all the evidence. "Your father was physically incapable of signing it on March 3rd. The witnesses are connected to Victoria, and I'd bet money that Peter Sorensen is someone Victoria found specifically to help her with this fraud." So what do? We fight. We demand a handwriting analysis of the signature. We present the medical records. We depose everyone involved. And we ask the court to remove Victoria as executor for breach of fiduciary duty. The legal battle lasted 9 months. 9 months of court filings, depositions, forensic document analysis, and mounting legal bills. Emily grew from a newborn to a chunky, happy baby who was starting to crawl. And I grew from a grieving, confused daughter into someone much harder. The forensic handwriting expert's report was damning. The signature on the March 3rd will was highly likely to be a forgery or a traced signature. The pressure, angle, and flow were inconsistent with Dad's known signatures. Someone had faked it. When presented with this evidence, Peter Sorensen suddenly became unavailable for his scheduled deposition. Patricia discovered that he'd closed his practice and moved to Florida. She filed a complaint with the Massachusetts Bar Association. The paralegal, when deposed a second time and threatened with perjury charges, broke down and admitted the truth. Victoria had brought the will to the office already signed. She'd asked them to witness it and notarize it, claiming her father had signed it earlier that day but needed witnesses after the fact. The paralegal had felt uncomfortable, but did it anyway because she was afraid of losing her job. Linda Chen, Derek's cousin, also cracked under pressure. She admitted Victoria had paid her $5,000 to notarize the document without actually witnessing the signature. The evidence was overwhelming. Victoria had forged our father's will. But it got worse, much worse. While the will contest was ongoing, Patricia had requested a full accounting of all estate assets. What she found was shocking. In the 6 weeks between Dad's death and my first conversation with Drew Kensington, Victoria had been busy. She transferred $800,000 from Dad's investment accounts into her personal accounts. She'd sold 2 of Dad's commercial properties for a combined $1.2 million, well below market value, and deposited the proceeds into an account she controlled. She'd taken out a $300,000 home equity line of credit against Dad's Brookline house, using her power of attorney from when Dad was alive. She'd liquidated Dad's stock portfolio, worth about $600,000, and moved the money offshore. In total, Victoria had stolen or misappropriated approximately $2.9 million from Dad's estate before anyone caught on. When Patricia presented this evidence to the probate court, the judge was furious. He immediately removed Victoria as executor and froze all remaining estate assets. He also referred the matter to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution. "Ms. Blackwood," the judge said, looking directly at Victoria, "you have egregiously violated your fiduciary duty as executor. You have forged documents, misappropriated estate funds, and attempted to defraud your sister of her rightful inheritance. This court finds your conduct to be not only unethical but criminal. I am recommending that the district attorney pursue charges for forgery, larceny, and fraud." Victoria sat there, stone-faced, her expensive lawyer whispering furiously in her ear. The criminal investigation moved forward. The DA assigned to the case was a tenacious prosecutor named James Chen, no relation to Linda Chen. He built a comprehensive case against Victoria. The charges were 1 count of forgery of a legal document, 4 counts of larceny, over $250,000, 3 counts of fraud, 1 count of perjury for lying in her deposition, 1 count of witness tampering for paying Linda Chen. If convicted on all counts, Victoria faced up to 25 years in prison. Derek, her hedge fund manager husband, was conspicuously absent during all of this. I later learned he'd filed for divorce the moment the criminal charges were announced. He claimed he had no knowledge of Victoria's actions and that he'd been kept in the dark about everything. Whether that was true or just self-preservation, I don't know. Victoria's law firm fired her immediately. They also reported her to the Massachusetts Board of Bar Overseers. Her law license was suspended pending the outcome of the criminal trial. My sister, the successful corporate lawyer, was facing prison time and professional ruin. Part of me felt sick about it. This was my sister. We'd grown up together. We'd grieved our mother together. We'd just lost our father together. How had it come to this? But the larger part of me felt rage. She had looked me in the eye while I was holding my newborn daughter, while I was drowning in grief, and she had lied to me. She had calculated that I would be too vulnerable, too trusting, too overwhelmed to question her. She had planned to steal $3.75 million from me. She had betrayed not just me, but our father's memory. The trial began in February 2023, 10 months after Dad's death. I attended every day, Emily, now almost a year old, being cared for by Ryan's mother while I sat in that courtroom. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. They walked the jury through every fraudulent transaction, every forged signature, every lie Victoria had told. They called Drew Kensington, who testified that Victoria had never mentioned a new will to him and that Dad had been clear about his 50-50 wishes. They called the hospice nurses, who testified about Dad's condition on March 3rd and stated unequivocally that he could not have signed legal documents that day. They called the forensic document examiner, who explained in detail why the signature was a forgery. They called the paralegal and Linda Chen, both of whom testified about Victoria's scheme. And they presented the financial records, showing exactly how Victoria had systematically looted our father's estate. Victoria's defense attorney, Marcus Webb, tried to paint her as a grieving daughter who'd made some poor decisions in the midst of emotional turmoil. He argued that she'd intended to eventually share the money with me, that she was just holding on to it temporarily. The jury didn't buy it. The evidence was too clear, too deliberate. I was called to testify. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I had to sit there, 15 feet from my sister, and describe how she'd lied to me, how she'd manipulated my grief and my trust. Victoria's lawyer tried to make me seem greedy, tried to suggest that I was bitter about not getting more money. "Ms. Blackwood, isn't it true that you were unhappy with a 25% share?" he asked. "No," I said clearly. "I was unhappy that my sister lied to me. If my father had legitimately wanted to give Victoria 75%, I would have honored that. But he didn't. She forged his will and stole from both of us, from his memory, from everything he worked for. But you stand to gain millions if your sister is convicted. I stand to receive what my father intended me to have, what Victoria tried to steal from me." The jury deliberated for 7 hours. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Victoria showed no emotion as the verdicts were read. She just sat there, perfectly still, her expensive suit and perfect hair unchanged, as her entire life collapsed around her. Sentencing was 2 months later. I submitted a victim impact statement. It was 3 pages long, detailing not just the financial harm, but the emotional devastation of being betrayed by my own sister. "Victoria didn't just steal money from me," I wrote. "She stole my ability to trust. She stole my father's final wishes. She stole the memory of our family. She saw me at my most vulnerable, holding my newborn daughter, grieving our father, and she decided that was the perfect time to rob me blind. That's not a sister. That's a predator." The judge sentenced Victoria to 12 years in prison. She'd be eligible for parole after serving 8. Additionally, the court ordered Victoria to make full restitution of the $2.9 million she'd stolen, plus interest, plus penalties. She was also ordered to pay my legal fees, which had reached $87,000. Victoria was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. She didn't look at me, not once. The estate was finally settled 6 months later. After all the legal fees and expenses, the estate was valued at $6.1 million, down from the original $7.5 million due to legal costs and Victoria's theft that couldn't be fully recovered. I received my 50%, $3.05 million. It should have felt like winning, it felt like losing. I'd lost my sister. My daughter would grow up without an aunt. Family gatherings would forever be incomplete, and no amount of money could change that. But I tried to honor Dad's memory with the inheritance. Ryan and I paid off our mortgage. We set up a substantial college fund for Emily. We donated $100,000 to the hospice facility that cared for Dad, establishing the Robert Blackwood Compassionate Care Fund. I went back to teaching after my maternity leave, even though I didn't have to financially. I love teaching, and I wasn't going to let Victoria's actions steal that from me too. Victoria is currently serving her sentence at MCI Framingham, a women's prison about 30 minutes from where I live. She'll be eligible for parole in 2031. She's written me several letters. I haven't opened any of them. Ryan says maybe someday I will, maybe when I'm ready. But I'm not ready. I don't know if I ever will be. Derek divorced Victoria and moved to California. He apparently started dating someone new within 6 months. From what I hear through mutual acquaintances, he's completely distanced himself from the whole situation, tells people his ex-wife had mental health issues that he didn't know about. Coward. The hardest part is explaining this to Emily as she gets older. She's 3 now, curious about everything. She asks about family, about grandparents, about aunts and uncles. "Mommy, why don't I have an Auntie Victoria?" What do you say to that? How do you explain that her aunt tried to steal her college fund before she was even born? For now, I just say, Aunt Victoria made some bad choices and she's living far away. Someday, when Emily is older, I'll tell her the full truth. I'll tell her about the importance of integrity, of honoring promises, of treating family with respect. I'll tell her about her grandfather, who worked hard and loved his daughters equally. And I'll tell her about what happened when one of those daughters decided greed was more important than love. People ask me sometimes if I regret pursuing the case so aggressively. If I wish I'd tried to work it out privately, keep it in the family. Here's what I tell them. Victoria didn't keep it in the family. She took it outside the boundaries of family the moment she forged Dad's will. She took it outside the moment she lied to my face. She took it outside the moment she decided I was a mark instead of a sister. I didn't destroy our relationship. She did, I just refused to be a victim. Would I have preferred to have my sister, the one I grew up with, the one who taught me how to braid my hair and helped me through my first breakup? Of course. But that sister was gone. Maybe she'd never really existed. Maybe there was always a calculating coldness underneath that I'd been too trusting to see. The Victoria who forged our father's will, who stole millions, who lied without hesitation, that's who she really is. And that person deserved to face consequences. 12 years is a long time. Emily will be 15 when Victoria is eligible for parole. A teenager, Victoria will have missed her entire childhood. Sometimes I think about what Victoria gave up. She had a successful career, a wealthy husband, a beautiful apartment, respect, freedom. She risked all of it for what? An extra $1.875 million that she was already well off without. It wasn't about need, it was about greed. About believing she deserved more, about believing I deserved less. The money from Dad's estate is in a trust now, managed by a professional firm. It's generating income, growing, secure. Emily will have everything she needs for college, for starting her life. Maybe she'll be a teacher like me, maybe a firefighter like her dad, maybe something completely different. But whatever she does, she'll know that her grandfather loved her grandmother, loved his daughters, and tried to do right by everyone. And she'll know that when someone tried to pervert that legacy, her mother fought back. That's worth more than any inheritance. Ryan and I are doing well. We're talking about having another baby. Emily wants a little brother or sister. Life goes on. Sometimes I drive past the old Brookline house where Dad lived. We eventually sold it, couldn't bear to keep it knowing what Victoria had done there, the documents she'd forged, the lies she'd told. A young family bought it. I see their kids playing in the yard sometimes. That makes me happy. Dad would have liked that. I still have good memories of Victoria from before. The sister who held my hand at Mom's funeral, who helped me study for my teaching certification exam, who was excited when I told her I was pregnant. Were those memories real? Was that person real? Or was I always just seeing what I wanted to see? I don't have answers to those questions. Maybe I never will. What I do know is this: family is supposed to mean something. Trust is supposed to mean something. When someone violates that trust, especially someone who's supposed to love you, the consequences have to mean something too. Victoria made her choices. She chose greed over integrity. She chose money over family. She chose to forge, to steal, to lie. I made my choice too. I chose to fight, to honor my father's true wishes, to protect my daughter's future, to stand up and say that betrayal has consequences. 12 years in prison is Victoria's consequence. Living without my sister is mine. But I'd make the same choice again, every time. Because integrity matters, truth matters, family, real family matters. And no amount of money is worth selling those things for. Victoria learned that the hard way. She's learning it every day in that prison cell. I hope everyone watching this learns it the easy way. Your family's trust is sacred. Your word is your bond. And when you break those things, don't be surprised when everything else breaks too. As for me, I'm teaching Emily about trust and honesty and love. I'm building a life with Ryan that's based on those values. I'm honoring my father's memory by being the daughter he raised me to be. That's my inheritance, not the money, though that helps, but the values, the integrity, the refusal to let evil win just because it's wearing a familiar face. Victoria can have her 12 years to think about what she did, to think about what she destroyed, to think about the niece she'll never know and the sister she betrayed. I'm moving forward, building my life, raising my daughter, teaching my students, and refusing to let betrayal define me. Justice was served, life goes on, and that's enough.